Welcome to Weasel Gaming, and today we're talking about the Zamazenta theme deck. We're looking at the tactics, strategies, pros, cons, strengths, weaknesses, that kind of thing. To start off with, of course, this is a metal deck. It has 18 metal power, nothing else in there. Pretty straightforward. So we'll get right to the heart of things, the Pokemon. I always like to start off with the starters, the things that you want to be pulling right at the start of the game, the first Pokemon you want to be playing out as your active Pokemon. And in this deck, there really aren't any good candidates. There are some potentials, so we'll go over those. They really require you to have more than one card available, where a lot of other starters you're looking at, here's one card that can help you right from the start. In this case, it's not really the way it goes. Pharaoh Seed and Pharaoh Thorn are not bad. Pharaoh Seed himself is worthless. But if you happen to have both in your hand, Pharaoh Thorn Triple Smash is a pretty good starting attack. You flip 3 coins, the attack does 30 damage for each heads. That gives you a possibility of 0, 30, 60, or 90 damage. For a Pokemon that's got 130 health, that's not bad. You can command the early game, but it requires you to have Pharaoh Seed, Pharaoh Thorn, and energy. Now, if you are lucky enough to get that going, you can put some more energy and work your way up to Energy Slap. Your next option for an early game player is Panaird and Bisharp. Again, Panaird, not very good. Bisharp is okay. 120 health. You have a 2 energy slicing blade that does 60 damage. If you're lucky enough to have a whole bunch of pawns that you can put down, then you can actually do some decent damage with Charge Order, which would give you a 90 damage attack for 1 energy. But that really requires a lot of the correct cards. Later on, you can use things like Sonia to try to pull those other pawns out of your deck and make Bisharp really powerful. But it really takes all the stars to align kind of situation for that to be a good combination. Your other potential starters are Duraludon and Zamazenta. Not because they're great starters, but just because it's something that can hold that front line for a few turns while you organize the rest of your cards. Duraludon has 130 health, which can hold out for a while. Metal Sharpener does 30 damage and is much better to play later on when you can actually use that to recover energy. Otherwise, you got to get up to 3 energy to use Power Beam. Zamazenta, for 2 energy, has Guard Press, which is okay. 30 damage attacks and blocks 20 damage. Pretty powerful against your early basic Pokemon you might be facing, but if they start evolving, Guard Press itself is not going to hold out very well. If you get to 3 energy, of course, there's Power Rush, but we'll be talking more about all that stuff later. So starting out, it's kind of rough. Another option that you have is Rookie D and Corvisquire. Rookie D is not very good in and of itself, but if you can evolve them up to Corvisquire, you got an 80 health, 2 energy Drill Peck, which does 50 damage. Not great. Not even really good, to be honest. But in desperation, it can be used. Really, I don't like to do this unless you absolutely have to, because Corvisquire is much better to be evolved into Korvik Knight. So there really are no good starters, and that's one of the biggest weaknesses of this deck, is just the lack of starters. Now we're going to talk about defense. Of course, our first mention of defense we've already talked about is Zamazenta. 120 health is okay. Power Rush does 120 damage, which can be good. Guard Press, though, is your one defensive ability that you have here, and that does 30 damage while blocking 20. It's pretty good against basics. It's okay against some stage 1s. It really does almost nothing against your stage 2s. it can, that 20 damage, be the difference between life and death for your Pokemon. So sometimes you will use it just to hold them off a little bit longer. Let's say you're facing something that has 150 health. You might want to lead with that guard press, do 30, block 20. Then that way, if they don't do at least 140 damage, they're not going to knock you out. Then you can follow that up with the power rush that will hopefully knock them out at that point. So keep in mind, doing that small guard press, following it by the power rush, is actually better than doing the power rush and the guard press, unless you know you're going to lose your guy anyways. If Zamazenta is going down after the attack, it won't matter. The real king of this deck, in every way, shape, and form, is Korvik Knight. Korvik Knight is why I love this deck. This is one of my favorite theme decks to play. And I'm just playing theme decks for fun. Korvik Knight is the bomb. Seriously, this deck is great for this. Korvik Knight has 170 health, which is huge. Korvik Knight's only weakness is electric, and there isn't a lot of electric theme deck usage out there. The 1 energy Peck for 50 damage is not impressive by any means. The 3 energy Iron Wings is where everything rests in this deck. 130 damage, which is pretty impressive and can knock out a lot of things in one hit. On top of that, you don't have to, you may discard 2 energy from this Pokemon. If you do during your opponent's next turn, this Pokemon takes 100 less damage from attacks. You're not completely immune, but you're going to reduce the damage by 100. And that's after applying weaknesses and resistance. This is going to save you so many times. I often will play Korvik Knight and only Korvik Knight in this deck because he is that powerful. Every bit of energy I can load is going to go onto Korvik Knight. You will see me playing Korvik Knight with 5, 6, 7 energy or more. I will do everything I can to load as much energy onto Korvik Knight as possible. Korvik Knight attacks, discards 2 energy. Next turn you throw an energy on, you attack, you discard 2 energy, you throw another energy on. You just keep repeating this process, and you can keep Korvik Knight up for a very, very long time. And that's really where this deck exists. So, again, we don't have a lot of starters, but that's because a lot of this deck is built around just being able to do damage. So now we're going to look at our power, our heavy hitters. We have, of course, Bisharp, Bisharp, whatever it is, who evolves from Ponard. It's not a great card, not a great attacker. It's okay, especially mid-game, if you can get a couple pawns on the bench. Oftentimes, pawns will just sit in my hand until I need them. So it's the kind of thing where if I get all 3 pawns in my hand and I can clear some space on the bench, I'm going to utilize them to get Bisharp out there for the 1 energy 90 damage attack. So not great, but usable. Pharaoh Seed, Pharaoh Thorn, we already talked about. The reason I'm bringing them up again, Pharaoh Thorn is a decent mid to late game attacker. 130 health. Triple Smash does allow you to do up to 90 damage. Energy Slap, though, is 100 damage without any kind of risk. And it allows you to move your energy from this Pokemon to one of your benched Pokemon. This is a great lead off before putting Korvik Knight out. On the attack where you know Pharaoh Thorn is going to die the next turn anyways, you use Energy Slap, do 100 damage, then put all 3 of that energy back on your Korvik Knight, and suddenly Korvik Knight's ready to go, or has a bunch of extra energy that they can use to do attacks and bring up those shields. Duraludon is another good, strong Pokemon, 130 health. Power Beam does 110. So not super strong, but playable. Usually, though, Duraludon is kind of a mid-game for me. I'll keep a Duraludon on my bench and just be ready to do Metal Sharpener. After I lose some of my earlier Pokemon, I'll put Duraludon in against a weaker opponent that's not going to knock me out in one turn. And I'm going to do a couple rounds of Metal Sharpener just to pull that energy from discard and go and put that onto one of your Pokemon, which of course is going to be Korvik Knight. Whole deck revolves around Korvik Knight. Of course, your other attacker is Zamazenta. We've already talked about Guard Press a bit. Power Rush is a 3 energy attack. When you use it for 120 damage, you do have to flip a coin, and if tails, during your next turn, this Pokemon can't attack. That's the one downside of Zamazenta. You cannot attack at all. Now, you can do the switch trick with this. So, if you use Power Rush and you flip a tails, but you have switch in your hand, you might be saved. On your next turn, you can switch Zamazenta out for something that's got a low retreat cost, a Pawn, a Pharaoh Seed, a Rookie D, someone that's got a cheap retreat cost. You put that Pokemon in, use their retreat to bring Zamazenta back out, and then Zamazenta can do that Power Rush the next turn. So you can actually get back-to-back Power Rushes even if you flip a tails. So keep that in mind for when you're playing Zamazenta. But, again, the main card for damage, defense, everything in this deck is going to be Korvik Knight. Korvik Knight is the big winner here. 170 health, 1 energy peck for 50 damage, 3 energy Iron Wings for 130. 130 is pretty decent damage. You're going to be able to take out anything in two hits. And it comes with that ability to dump energy for shields. Now you have to think about this one a little bit. It does take some tactical thought. When you're going to use that Iron Wings attack to kill something, what are they going to bring in next? Do they have something that can take you out? Keep it in mind that if you pop the shield, they're probably not going to bring that Pokemon out. So sometimes you want to do the math and figure out, okay, can I take that hit with my 170 health, lure that Pokemon out that I can then knock out, and start popping my shields again against all of their, Pokemon on their bench that don't have energy or can't do any big damage. So you got to think a little bit about how and when you're going to use that Iron Wings ability. And it's always great if you can get a second Korvik Knight set up in your bench and start putting a little bit of energy there when you can, just so you have that backup. In case you lose one, you can bring the other one in. So that's our Pokemon. For types, you have 2 main types that you're dealing with here. You do have some colorless with Rookie D and Corvisquire, but there's not enough power there to really pull anything for you. You're not going to win a game using Corvisquire and Rookie D. So mainly you're looking at weakness to fire and electric. Your metal types are all going to be weak to fire. Korvik Knight and Rookie D, Corvisquire are going to be weak to electric. Now there isn't a lot of electric out there right now, so Korvik Knight is very powerful because of that. There is a lot of fire out there, and there's more coming. You have Cinder Ace. You have Relentless Flame is still a very popular deck. Coming up in Vivid Voltage, you have another fire deck coming with the Charmander. So there are a lot of weaknesses for the metal set of your Pokemon, but Korvik Knight's your big hitter anyways, and he doesn't have to worry about fire. You are pretty resistant to grass and fighting type, so you're fairly resistant against your Sirfetch'd decks, Rillaboom, those kind of decks. So pretty good in the type setup. Now on to our trainer cards. For drawing, we have Hop and Dan. You have 4 Hops in the deck, so lots of drawing capability from him to draw 3 cards. You do have 2 Dans. Dan allows you to draw 2 cards and play Rock, Paper, Scissors to draw 2 more. You also have 2 Professor's Research. Now, I don't really care for Professor's Research. I don't like discarding cards. I often find myself in a situation where I'm holding Korvik Knight in my hand. I can't get Rookie D Korvik Squire setup, I don't want to throw away Korvik Knight yet because I need to use that card. So I don't want to use Professor's Research. However, if you have Korvik Knight down and you're in a pretty good setup, Professor's Research is pretty easy to use to dump things. You don't need lots of Duraludons. You don't need lots of the other Pokemon. And you can even sacrifice a fair amount of your trainers. The one thing you don't want to be sacrificing, though, is energy. If you have energy in your hand, hold on to it. Don't play Professor's Research unless you're really desperate. For pulling more Pokemon, you have two main options. And that is your Great Ball, which lets you look at the top 7 cards of your deck and pull one Pokemon out of that. And Poke Kid, who allows you to search your deck, reveal a Pokemon, and put it into your hand. Great Ball is whatever's in that top 7. You're going to be picking the best out of that group. Poke Kid is used very tactically to get exactly what you need. Early on, if you're lacking anything really good to play, pulling that Zamazenta out, or using it to get another pawn, or a Pharaoh Thorn, or the Duraludon you need mid-game to start recovering energy. Really, though, Poke Kid's going to be used to complete your evolutionary cycle from Rookie D to Korvik Squire to Korvik Knight. Whatever you're missing in that chain, that's where Poke Kid's going to come in handy to pull that for you and help you get that up and running. Your other potential for drawing Pokemon is Sonia. Sonia allows you to search your deck for 2 basic Pokemon. The big time this is handy is to get 2 pawns, or if you need like a Rookie D so that you can start building towards your Korvik Knight. However, Sonia plays a much bigger part in your energy. So, on to energy. You have 2 Sonias, you have 2 Metal Saucers. Metal Saucers are great for recovering that energy from your discard pile, but remember they can only go onto benched Pokemon. So if you have a Korvik Knight out in your active Pokemon, you're not going to be able to use Metal Saucer to put more energy on him. You have to have that metal energy on the benched Pokemon. Sonia allows you to pull 2 energy from your deck. That's pretty powerful, especially in this deck where you want to be dumping tons and tons and tons and tons of energy on Korvik Knight. Now for other cards in your hand, you do have 2 potions. Those allow you to heal 30 damage each. Use them when you need them, but if at all possible, save them until you get that Korvik Knight out there. Being able to block 100 damage and then heal 30 more really puts a hurt on the opponent when they can't do any damage or get any long-lasting damage. And you also have 2 switches. Again, this switch is very handy for fixing Zamazenta's 1 weakness with Power Rush. So keep that in mind. Otherwise, it's a good way to maybe pull a Korvik Knight off the front line if you are running out of energy. If you no longer have enough energy to keep that shield going, pull him back to your bench, put a Duraludon out there with 1 energy that can start pulling that energy back from the discard and putting it back onto Korvik Knight. That's also a good time to use those Metal Saucers to then throw some more energy onto Korvik Knight. So if you do a mid-game switch, pulling Korvik Knight out, and you have a Metal Saucer, you have Duraludon, you can get 2 energy back on Korvik Knight, plus a 3rd energy that you can play from your hand, and really get Korvik Knight ready to go right back in there after Duraludon's knocked out. So playing Korvik Knight is the key to your victory. So let's look at stats then. Power is dealing with how hard the Pokemon in your deck hit. And honestly, while this is one of my favorite decks, it's not the most damaging deck. You look at Duraludon, who only does 110 damage. Pharaoh Thorn, who's just kind of all over the place. Bisharp, kind of all over the place. Korvik Knight, while very powerful, is only doing 130 damage. Your Zamazenta is only doing 120. You're not putting up gigantic damage numbers. And that's going to be a problem when you're facing off against things that have 150, 160, 170, 180 health, 190 in some cases in those theme decks. It's rare to see those big numbers, but there are some decks that sport a lot of that. Surfetched is a great example. A lot of high health Pokemon there. Rillaboom is another one. That's a huge chunk of health on that Pokemon. So your ability to knock things out in one turn is a little weak. Speed is your ability to get the deck moving and start hitting hard. Now, while you don't have a lot of great starters, you can come out of the gate pretty quickly with 1 or 2 energy and start doing some damage. So it's a fairly speedy deck to get moving. Agility is your ability to get Pokemon on the bench and ready to fight. And again, you have a lot of drawing capability with Hop, Dan, the Professor, with Sonia pulling Pokemon, Great Balls. There's lots of different ways to pull Pokemon. So you have a lot of options there. Your efficiency is your ability to handle energy. And while this deck actually does pretty well there between your Sonias, your Metal Saucers, your Duraludons, other than Korvik Knight, you're not throwing a lot of energy away. However, Korvik Knight does throw a lot. So it kind of counters your ability to draw a little bit. But it's still a fairly energy efficient deck, which is why it's sitting at a 3. Complexity of play is not very complex. Korvik Knight is your most complex thing. Knowing when to deploy them, when to use the shield, how to predict the enemy. But that's really it. It's Korvik Knight. And usually you can just bully your way through that. Resilience for this deck is huge. This is a very resilient deck. A lot of your Pokemon have 130, 120 health. Korvik Knight has 170. You have defense from Zamazenta if you need it. Korvik Knight has huge defense with that 100 defense shield from the Iron Wings ability. So very resilient deck. Plus, on top of that, you have 2 potions to help you heal up some damage. And type ability right now is great. So again, this is a high stat at a 4. You are weak to fire decks, which there's a lot of fire decks, but most of your power in this deck comes from Korvik Knight. And if you happen to be going up against an electric deck and really can't utilize Korvik Knight that well, you have the rest of your metal type Pokemon that aren't half bad. So pretty good ability to deal with different types of decks. Your manipulation, however, is 0. You have no way to really mess with your opponent's deck in any way, shape, or form. So that's a pretty low stat in this deck. All in all, this is a great deck. It is a powerful deck. It is a strong deck. It can do consistent damage, maybe not huge numbers, but consistent damage, and it can stay in the fight for a long time due to Korvik Knight's defensive capabilities. Just remember to stack all the energy you have on Korvik Knight. So with that, I hope you feel that you're a little more ready to play this deck in theme play. I hope you understand a little bit more about the strengths and weaknesses of this deck. And please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.